Howdy, howdy, and welcome to My Bloody Judy with your final faguettes, myself, Zachary Patton Garcia.
And Ian Carlos Crawford. And joining us today, we have two opening chills. He co-hosts Beyond the Blinds and hosts Dunzo.
Troy McEady. Hi.
Hi, Troy.
Hi.
And he is a freelance artist and Heather Langenkamp aficionado.
I love Heather Langenkamp. And
I feel like I killed the whole recording. Oh my goodness, what did I do?
And what's your name, sir?
I'm wearing the shirt starring Heather Langenkamp. And I'm an illustrator and graphic designer of sorts. So
and what's your name?
Laz Marquez.
There we go.
The wonderful Laz Marquez. The Final Girls poster that's always behind me, he did that one. Perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing. And
I'm
Laz
getting lost in like this film.
Yes. This one, Nightmare, New Nightmare. What are we talking about?
We are here to talk about New
Yes.
Nightmare.
Yeah.
Before the recording, Zach brought up the Nightmare on Elm Street revival, which Laz and I did see together, and Laz feels very strongly about it. But we're not talking about that movie. We're talking about New Nightmare.
It was drama, y'all. Drama. There was flipping of tables. There was some. We're gonna have an Andy Cohen reunion after this for that specific information. But yeah, today we're gonna be covering Wes Craven's New Nightmare. This was 1994, right? Do we know how much this made at the box office? It didn't do incredible, did it? It didn't revive the franchise.
It did good. I looked. I actually saw that on
Did it?
IMDb. I think the budget was like 8,000, and it made like 20,000.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I mean, horror films are usually able to be profitable, right? This came after. Which one did this come after? This was after Freddy's dead.
Yep.
Yeah, because the big point was that they killed Freddy, right? They hosted all of these big press things. I didn't know that they had a funeral for Freddy Krueger. And all of this really random stuff. And when they brought him back, yeah, it was I don't. What year was Freddy's dead? I don't even remember. Let's see.
Probably 92.
Do you think it was that soon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
That would make sense.
This film was 94.
Mm-hmm. So this film is this is what. So me and Ian were actually talking about this, and then Ian told me that he was talking about this with you also, Laz. Is that this movie really, when you watch it, it's kind of insane after because me and Ian have been covering Scream for a month and a half, so we've been Scream.
Nearly 2 months.
And then watching this one, I am I don't know. It's really cool to see that he was in a whole meta thought process with this movie, around this time, right? He had all of these ideas and these concepts, and he was really putting it out here in New Nightmare, and didn't get it all out in the way that he wanted to, and moved on to Scream and did the same thing, right? There's a through line there.
Well, I think what he did with this film is really take what he created and took it to a next level, and tried to make it meta. He would, so I'm gonna be the annoying info guy.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say it doesn't really work. I was like,
This is where I laugh. This is his least favorite of the franchise.
This is where I go all Lazzy and meta within myself. But he wanted to do with Dream Warriors, the third film within the franchise. He wanted to do this whole meta weird thing where Freddy comes into the real world and he does his stuff and blah blah blah. So this is him fulfilling that prophecy, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this, so I kind of went back and backtracked a little bit because I wanted to know where meta horror was kind of coming from, right? Where were the roots of meta horror? And if you're saying he was thinking about that way back at Dream Warriors, it's pretty far back. So I the one of the earliest ones I could find was a movie called Popcorn that I never heard of. Apparently it's super hard to find. Has anybody seen that? If few
don't
years
think
before
so.
this one, I think, and it was supposed to be like one of the roots of meta horror, I guess. But yeah, I've read a little article about that one, and then stuff like this followed, and then Scream, and then we really like vamp up the meta horror. But what I found interesting is like there's a bunch of franchises that have like quote unquote curses connected to them, right? Like Poltergeist, and then we have The Exorcist, and like this is like also a really cool way to like kind of play with that and be like, well, what if this franchise was cursed, and like the curse actually came out and like started grabbing at these people in real life, even though we only have like 2 deaths in this one.
I just love that this movie feels like it's obviously super meta, but it also feels like, when you watch this as an adult, like this was the one that I used to watch the most as a kid for whatever reason. I think it's because it scared me the most, because I really felt like Freddy was real, because I'm being told in this one that he is beyond movies now and he's real. But it just feels like a love letter to people who like this franchise and to the people who made it. And it's like Wes's love letter to the people who built New Line, and like it just feels really special. Like it just feels like an event,
It does. And I mean, it was kind of treated like that too, right? Like they got a lot of people on board to do like even like bit roles in this, like at the funeral scene, like we've got, a bunch of people connected to the first one in it. I think even like they wanted to get Johnny Depp, but they were too, like, I think Wes was too scared to ask him, and then like later ran into Johnny Depp, and Johnny Depp's like, yeah, man, I would have done it. You guys should have called me. It did feel like something, and also, does it feel like it's more than 10 years? I'm always surprised when they say it's only 10 years after the original. I'm like, this feels like a movie that was, I don't know, like this was the N2O, of the franchise, Nightmare 2.0.
This feels way later into the 90s to me for some reason. I don't know why.
94, man. That's it. Like,
it's
it's
so
pretty
weird.
early.
Yeah, I think this is the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie I actually watched all the way through, because I was always scared of Freddy and the concept of him as a kid. And I was 10 when this came out. And I remember the same neighbors that lived directly across the street. We would like take turns. Like there was like a brother and a sister, and they would have their cousins there a lot. And like I was the youngest of my family, so there was no one here. We would take turns. Like either they would be here or I would be there, and we would always rent. Both of our moms were very bad at being like, no, you shouldn't watch that. And I remember renting Scream and this within like the same weekend together. And like, this was the first Freddy movie I watched all the way through. And like, so much so that I remember being surprised like later on when I went back and watched the first Nightmare on Elm Street, because Laz, I love you. That version of Freddy is fucking stupid to me. Like when he's cutting off when he's cutting off his own fingers and like laughing and making jokes, I'm like, this is dumb. This isn't scary.
I don't know.
I have thoughts about that.
He's gonna leave the podcast, Ian. We've got 2 strikes already.
Yeah.
No, like I agree with you in that like his look is very like, it's like Nosferatu, but like poorly done.
Kind of. I can see. I can see that. I don't know. I think I'm with you on like this was my first, through and through like watch of a nightmare movie. I remember watching this one, thinking this was. I want to say I thought it was the one with when it was 3 with Patricia Arquette, because I was obsessed with Patricia Arquette. I don't know. I shouldn't have been watching Stigmata, but like that movie made me obsessed with Patricia Arquette. So I like wanted to watch everything she was in. And I remember ordering it from Amazon and it arriving in the mail, and I watched it. And she was nowhere to be found, but like I fell in love with this movie and replayed it and played it out with dolls and everything. Like this was so fucking cool to me. I loved this movie so much, and like all of the little action, scenes, everything made for, I don't know, just great play. I remember I used to make movies. I had like a little video camera, so I used to make movies, and we had a dugout with a baseball field behind our house, and I used to make my friends go and stand on the dugout and reach for this guy like Dylan does at the park.
You're like, climb to the top.
So this inspired a lot for
now
me.
Jump.
Just jump. I think I had somebody. I think one of our friends' dads came out and like stood so that one of us could jump off. But yeah, it was just a fun movie, and it's such a great watch. It doesn't really get old. I think the only part that I really take, it's not even a big issue, but the only part that kind of loses a little bit of steam for me is like the final battle, right?
Okay, what do you not like about it?
It just like after following everything else, like the freeway and Nancy literally running around the hospital, and like there's a lot of energy leading up to that, and then I feel like the energy kind of goes down a little bit, but not in a bad, not in a too bad of a way. Like it's still fun to watch. It's just I don't know, and I don't really vibe with the set piece, and
I get that. I actually agree with that. I just wanted to see what you'd say, because I agree that the only weak part of this movie for me is, and it's not even really weak, it's actually still really great, but just in comparison to like how good the rest of the movie is, I do think it's very like, and then he dies.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, like I guess he CGI explodes or whatever, but sure.
I love CGI flames and explosions. Like,
so Laz, I'm curious because for me it does become a little bit the only reason. So Zach and I did agree when we were watching it, which doesn't happen often, but like it does become a little bit like it feels like everything else is so different, and then that feels kind of like, oh yeah, that's a ending of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. But I could see, I feel like I might say what you're about to say, Laz, that maybe that's on purpose because she is entering the movie and like she just had the scene, which actually like I loved, with the actor playing her dad, and like he's become her dad and he's calling her Nancy, and she's like, why are you calling me Nancy? Like I would have loved if we got more of that like melting of like she still knows she's Heather, but like people are calling her Nancy.
So I think that's her moment of acceptance. Like she like has realized that she is Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
She is that character. She is that person. I would say similar, like, and I would maybe say resonates with you, Zach, like with like Jamie Lee Curtis being, like Laurie Strode.
Yeah.
Like they become that character.
That is like kind of the curse of a final girl and a final girl actress, right? Like, I mean, and Heather Langenkamp. So like, I watched this kind of alongside a documentary called I Am Nancy that Heather Langenkamp put together about like being Nancy. Have you seen that one, Les? I figured
so
you probably
good.
would. Have you? Yeah. And in it, she's going through this whole like, everybody fucking loves Freddy and everybody loves Robert Englund. Like everybody loves Freddy, and she's asking people about Nancy, and people are like, Nancy's okay.
Some of them don't even know who she is. It's
I
like,
know.
What?
There's this horrible moment where this guy's getting a Freddy Krueger tattoo, and she's sitting with him for like 3 hours while he gets the stamp tattoo. And she, like, towards the end of it, she asks, well, would you get a Nancy tattoo to go along with it? And he's like, it's like super cringy, super awkward. And he's like, I think I'll just stick with Freddy. And it's like crazy. This was also 2011. I think nowadays she's definitely finally getting her kudos and, getting her fan service that she deserved for so long. But yeah, let's talk about Heather Langenkamp and Nancy for a second. I think, that's a huge part of this movie. And even like with that documentary, that's sort of mirroring New Nightmare, In New Nightmare, we see all of these kids going crazy over Robert Englund, as Freddy. That's how you know. I told Ian, that's how you know there's no gays in the audience, because the gays would have been flocking Heather Langenkamp.
True.
She just didn't have any gays in the audience.
I don't know that they would. I don't
think so?
Like, I don't know that the gays would be like all over Heather Langenkamp.
I would. I'll be the one. When she says, I have a fan, that's me, I guess.
Me personally, I would love to just be near her, but
just to smell
like
it.
There's something interesting about this notion of like final girls and like how we perceive them and how we look at them. So like our iconic person is Jamie, Laurie Strode.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then where do we look outside of that?
And I think it's important to like kind of distinguish all of the final girls like separately, right? Like we were kind of talking about this earlier again, is Nancy is a really impressive final girl when you really think about it and you really get down to it. Like most final girls, like aside from the ones that have been coming out, the last 10 years, maybe 15 years, most of them, their first go around, especially Sydney and Laurie, like Sydney and Laurie are big final girls, but their first go around, their first movie really is a survive the night. Whereas Nancy's, she's plotting, scheming, and fucking like battling it out, off the bat, right? Like she figures out what's going on and she's automatically like into game mode. She's a type A personality, she's like doing this, and that does set her apart from a lot of those earlier final girls, but like people don't talk about that enough.
Well, I think like we're talking about the first film, first and foremost, by saying that Nancy as a character was really like productive and very, like she knew what to do in, those circumstances. But I think with New Nightmare, it's a very different circumstance with her having a child.
I mean, I do feel like right, this has to be a different character is like what it just like, that's like the whole point. Like she's not Nancy. That's why when like the guy that played her dad is calling her, she's like, why are you saying Nancy? And I do think you're right a little bit with like, it does bring a different dynamic because it's like, she's a mom. Her husband was just fucking murdered. Like, also, wait, so Zach and I both remembered the husband's murder a little differently.
I love how we just pivot to that real quick.
Because we both were like, Zach said it to me and I was like, wait, I was thinking the same thing. I thought it was a practical effect.
Did anybody else like remember the claw coming through the seat? Because it was very CGI in this. The version.
Yeah, I do kind of remember that in a weird. Yeah, I had that memory too.
Or is it just maybe like we remember that because we haven't watched it in a while?
It's probably that.
It probably is that.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to like Heather Langenkamp playing herself, right? Like she has to play herself differently than she would play Nancy. And, I've seen in interviews how, they approached her with this and it's like, hey, this is you. You're going to be yourself. And like, we want your husband in it and we want you to have a child. And she had a husband. She had a child, like they even wanted her husband to play her husband, but he like wouldn't do it. So they had to hire an actor. But like, talk about meta,
I think something to be like very honest and respectful to that actress, Heather Langenkamp, is that she had at that time a stalker. She was being stalked and she didn't know what to do with that. And Wes Craven came to, her and they were trying to create this narrative. And it was, difficult for her to agree to this narrative and like film.
Yeah, and Wes was clearly working something out with this and like bringing it to the actors and allowing them to kind of interject what they are needing to work out also was like brilliant, because you get movies like, what was the movie about the like end of the world and they had all the celebrities playing themselves? What was that called? Like This Is the End or something like that.
This is the end?
Yeah. And like, those are heightened versions of themselves, but like have no real connection to their lives. Whereas like we're seeing Nancy as this actress who's, known as Nancy, but not even being celebrated as Nancy. She has this child, she has a husband, all like she does in real life, and has this stalker like she has in real life. So she really like, that line must have been like pretty blurred for her.
I also love that she's just like Heather Langenkamp, really, when you think about it, aside from like, I would say maybe Neve Campbell could be the only example. She's the only final girl actress who, in this giant franchise of all these movies, her films are canon. Yeah. Like any movie that she's starred in this franchise is top tier, and you could only watch the ones that she's been in and totally know the whole story in a sense, cutting out all the fat. You know what I mean? Like the best parts of the story.
The reboot is the only one that doesn't connect to that original line, right? Like even New Nightmare kind of does because it's still like talking about that, right? So they never had because I haven't seen the entire thing, so they never had a moment where they had to like, I don't know, erase one of the past installments.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, they've done some trickery.
some omitting.
There's an emotional investment that I feel like that resonates off of her. Mm-hmm. Like there's an investment in this movie, in this franchise, in the character, in Freddy. You can just tell Heather Langenkamp like really fucking loves this franchise and she cares about it. And I feel like I love her in all of them, but there's just something about her acting in this one.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, the fact that she is being Nancy, and also, like you said, she has this like troubled relationship with this movie that is real. You know, you're seeing a lot of emotion play out on camera. And I just, oh, and she's beautiful in this movie.
Yeah.
Like,
Can we?
it's like blinding.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Like she's gorgeous in this film.
But everybody should have a note about her hair, because her hair is fucking 90s perfection.
God. Like, oh my God, I couldn't stop staring at it. And I always forget like how much I actually like when she gets the gray streak. I'm like, oh, it's so cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, keep it.
Yeah.
As a kid, I thought that was like so badass that she got the gray streak. I was like, ooh.
I was like, she's like Rogue.
Yeah. But like her hair is so like beautiful and voluminous. It's like a beautiful lion's mane around her head.
Like naturally, like I was watching, you know, that I Am Nancy documentary, and there was a whole scene about her hair, because everybody's like, yeah, she has this like naturally just big bountiful mound of hair on her head, and it's just so perfect. And this, I think this is my favorite.
She's awesome.
Yes, this is my favorite Nancy like final girl look. I think this is my favorite. I love like the bandaged arm. I love the kind of like vest thing she has on, and I like it more than the pajamas.
I actually like her Dream Warriors look a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I like 80s.
Yes.
I can't remember that one.
Thank you, Troy.
Zach and I aren't as well versed in the Nightmare franchise.
That's why we're good. It's a good franchise to go through for the first time while we're doing the podcast. So it'll be a good thing. Yeah, but like, so this movie, like, kind of going into it, you know, there's not even opening credits. Did you guys notice that? Like, there's no opening credits. They really put you in the movie, and they're wanting you to sit there and go, this is real life. You know, you're watching these actors.
I am a dummy, and I didn't notice that till Zach, like, literally at the end of the movie. He's like, yeah, they want to make it like real life. There's no credits. And I was like, oh.
But it's super easy to like miss, right? It's because you already expect an opening credits scene, that you're expecting that, and when it doesn't happen, you don't even realize that it didn't happen, you know?
Yeah, it's so immersive.
That has to be like some psychological thing that they like.
Did that bother you?
No, I loved it. I loved that.
I did too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do think, Troy, what you said is right, because like it does kind of like, there's no open credits, but it like puts you right in there. Like, I mean, it's the opening with the dream, but we're on set. We're like, they're doing the music, like it puts you in there right away. There's no like, there wouldn't have been like a slow, like credits are playing. Like, it's just like, you're there. We're going for it. Nancy screaming. Like,
yeah, you're just on set all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a question I have for everybody, because it really does throw you into the story super quick. And Nancy's going through turmoil like from the outset, right? Like there's not really a moment where they go to dinner or they have any sort of family setup. There's not a whole lot of that. There is some of that, but it's mixed in with everything that's already going on. So we have the phone calls happening, we have the earthquake, we have like a little bit of the kids watching, you know, her Nightmare on Elm Street movie. By the way, if my mother was a final girl, I would absolutely be up at 1 a.m. watching her final girl movies. Okay, so like nothing creepy about this kid.
This kid is all of us. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We are all Dylan.
That kid also was only ever cast as like the shithead kid who bites people, or a creepy kid. You know, there was nothing else, no in between for him. But yeah, no. What did you guys feel about them? Like basically pushing us right into plot and right into where we needed to be, because I think it's like by minute 36 that the dad's dead too.
I think it's cool if you are familiar, like if you're a person who's familiar with these movies. I think it's cool because there's sort of a shorthand.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not familiar with them, it's still really immersive, and I think really like fun to watch. Like every time I've ever watched this movie, I've not been like completely blown away by the opening, but I do find it really easy to get sucked into the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to cut it on and not turn away.
I think of Wes like as the second to this movie.
Mm-hmm. He's a final boy. Because
like Heather's all over this movie, right? And like I think she's the reason you get so sucked in, right? You're just watching the hair bounce around from scene to scene.
Well, it's really about her and Wes, and like their collaboration and their history. And I think that's a really rich but also difficult thing to navigate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think they do a good job with it. I will say, so to answer your question, Zach, I do think that like so it's not like, for me it's not a flaw, but I would have liked a little bit more of like a slow down burn, like slow burn to like
Yeah.
Freddy, because it kind of is. And I mean, I do agree with you too, Troy. Like it is pretty immersive, so you're just in there, and it's not like a bad thing. But I wouldn't have minded like a little bit more of like, okay, we open on that dream, but then it's like, you mentioned we don't see them go out dinner. Like maybe a dinner scene with her and her husband, and she's like, fine, but she's like, oh, I had a nightmare, and then slowly we build to like, ooh, who is she being stalked by? Oh, it's actually just Freddy Krueger. It's not like some fan. I wouldn't have minded a little bit of a slow burn build up to that, but it's I say that like that's how I would prefer the story to be told, but it's still the way it's done like works.
And I like that she doesn't waste a whole lot of time like denying to herself that something is happening. She's already kind of on that page. Because I don't know, like it makes sense in movies, right? You got to have the moment where you kind of like doubt yourself and stuff like that. But yeah, they happen so often that it is really refreshing to see somebody just like this is Freddy
nope,
Krueger.
It's Freddy.
Freddy.
Yeah, like this is my reality, and it's weird, but it's happening.
Yeah, this happened like 3 years ago for me.
Again, it's like a really Heather Langenkamp like film.
Well, like, but you know what I mean? If it's like supposed to be that the movies weren't real, one could see where they would have a plot line of her being like, well, this can't be Freddy. But no, she's like, well, doctor, it's Freddy Krueger that's after my son. That's what's happening.
I love that moment and that scene.
I was like, she's not going to try to lie. Like, shouldn't she at least lie to the doctor? That way they can get out of there.
No, we'll get to all
Dr. Hafner, I believe.
So
we're gonna get to all the hospital shit.
Yeah,
there is a very like I love that it's not just Nancy either. It's Wes is automatically like knowing some shit is up, but he's cursing this shit, right? He gets off scot-free by the end of the movie. Leaves her a little note, say, hey, thanks for playing Nancy one last time. It's like, thank you, fucking Wes Craven. I appreciate it. I'm going to prison after this. The cops are on their way to my house after all of this shit.
And my kid's alive, by the way. I don't know if you are concerned or not.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that.
Thanks.
Thank you. You obviously could make your way into our bedroom while we're like clearly thrashing around under the covers. I hope you checked on us, maybe left us some Tylenol, maybe a glass of water.
Wes like wrote into the script like none of it affected me, but it all affected everyone else.
I do love how like he does seem a little bit mad too here though. Like I like seeing like a meta Wes, right? Like him. How does Wes write himself? There was a moment taken out of the script. I think somebody told him no, but like he was supposed to, in the big confrontation with Nancy, he was supposed to have like cut off his eyelids to stay awake, and I thought that would have been so fucking badass, but I think somebody told him no.
It would have felt like
Wes in this.
Yeah, it would have felt like just a tad too like. I say this knowing that Freddy appears to the child in the clouds and then has a claw going over traffic, but it would have felt a little too surreal for a movie that's supposed to be like grounded in reality.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But I do, and I Jack and I talked about this while we were watching it. Like the only thing, and I remember as a kid kind of being like, oh, I would have liked that. I do wish we had like Freddy versus Robert Englund scene,
or Freddy versus cool. like Craven too. Like
we
don't really get Freddy versus like them, but like Freddy versus Robert Englund. Could you imagine?
Oh my god,
that'd have been so cool.
Especially with like this version of Freddy that is different. I mean, granted, it is Robert Englund, but different from the ones like in the world of this movie that are slightly different from the Freddy that Robert Englund had played. Like I think that would have like Wes Craven could have done a really good scene of like where Robert Englund's expecting him to do something else because that's what his Freddy would have done, but the real Freddy is more like brutal and like quieter, right? Like
Freddy versus Freddy. I like that.
I like it, but like everybody's just having nightmares, and Nancy's literally the one getting sliced and diced. Like Robert Englund's painting Freddy Krueger.
What I would say, being like a weird, nightmare aficionado. Is that like the new Freddy is based on a very different kind of notion.
Mhm.
He's not like the Freddy we know.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
Which is
very
appreciated. I like a
to-
scarier Freddy. I appreciate a scarier Freddy, and I like that they kind of even changed his look, right? He doesn't even look so much burned as he looks just like his skin's cut open and we're seeing underneath, you know? Like, and he,
Like
he just
he's
seems darker. The trench coat did something also.
different
Like
kind
that.
of person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say like the focus for me would be Nancy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heather.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Like she carries
We
this
always
movie. Like,
focus on like Freddy, but
Mhm.
we don't focus
And
on
that's,
her.
I guess that's a really good point too, is that every movie was a big Freddy thing. Like Freddy was like a cultural icon at this time, right? Like he'd have his own TV show, he'd had movie after movie after movie. It really didn't matter like who was carrying over in terms of Final Girls and like surviving characters, because if you had All Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, you had your Nightmare on Elm Street movie, right? But this was the Final Girl movie. This was giving Nancy her credit. And I just love like the steady maddening of Heather Langenkamp throughout this movie, right? Like she gets like more and more batshit. She does, so great with like anger and frustration, and like considering the circumstances, like
How do
all
you
of
see
this.
bad shit?
Oh my gosh, she looks batshit by the end. Like, I did have to watch this movie also from
I'ma
the
fight
perspective of
you.
everybody else around, and I'm like, she looks insane. She looks like
Would you not?
her,
Well,
the
well, yeah.
babysitter. They're both getting 5150. Like they're both like.
At that point,
so what was it that I was conflating the babysitter with, Zach?
Oh
Like
my!
what?
The TV in was that Dream Warriors?
Is it Dream Warriors when she gets her head in the TV?
Yeah.
And it is like a small blonde girl that gets her head in the TV, right?
that was not her.
Okay,
Yeah.
but what I mean, like when we were watching this, I was like, wait, isn't he throwing her TV? Isn't that what happens here? But like I realized I was just like conflating the two.
And the babysitter's a real one. She waits. There's no proof that Heather Langenkamp is telling the truth about any of this. She seems insane, but the babysitter fully believes her.
It's
and
like,
is
I got it.
punching
I
nurses
love
left and right.
the babysitter's character. Every time I watch this, I forget how much I love the babysitter.
Fucking cool, man.
She's
a cool
great.
babysitter.
Yeah.
She's a could girl.
And then she gets killed for being ride or die.
She
And has the
does.
best death of the
I
movie.
know. I mean, if you're gonna kill me, put me on a rotating set.
Yeah. Oh my god. Oh.
And then Heather Langenkamp, like really, like it is like so frustrating watching and like feeling for her, because like there is no way to prove any of this. It looks like she's abusing her son. It looks like she is like losing her mind. Like you can't convince somebody that, like, even the nurse says Freddy Krueger or something, like it just makes me cringe. I'm like, oh my god, poor Nancy,
again,
poor Heather.
She's not like Meryl Streep or anything,
Right.
but
Yeah.
like she,
Meryl Streep cannot play Nancy. That's the one role she cannot play.
but she like does her stuff
Yeah,
properly
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
like really creates I think a final girl properly. We'll see. We could combat
Yeah.
on like
She's kind of created a second Final Girl here too, hasn't she? In like one franchise.
Yeah.
Because she does have Nancy, and now Heather's like her own kind of Final Girl. I don't
Can
know.
I also just say really quickly, like I know we've talked a lot about her. We talked a lot about like this being her and Wes's story, but
Yeah.
like I find her really endearing as like playing a mom, and
Yes.
I thought her bond to Dylan in the movie felt really authentic, and it really was like it's the thing that keeps your heart kind of racing throughout the movie,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this really at the end of the day is a movie about a mom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like it's really cool. It gives me like Child's Play vibes,
Yeah.
I definitely got Child's Play vibes out of this one. And it like explains why she is so quick to go ahead and believe that something is happening, right?
Mhm.
Because her child's affected. Oh my goodness, we're bringing this full circle, because at the beginning, Laz even mentioned that the child's involved, and that brings a new dynamic, And so like that's the whole explanation here. Like if she was single and like had no child, would she be questioning herself a little bit more? Probably,
Yeah.
But here, like her child's affected, her child's being hurt. hurt, like, and she's got to figure something out like pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I like, to the movie's credit, it's like we said, they're not going to do 3-hour cut, but it's still like almost 2 hours, and it really doesn't feel like, it doesn't drag. And like you said, Troy, we're in it too, and like literally every other scene is like her being traumatized again by a new fucking like terrible thing Freddy has done, right? It's like she finds her son's stuffed animal cut, the walls cutting. As soon as her husband leaves, the walls like getting slashed like it's Freddy's claws.
Yeah.
And like every night her son is like sleepwalking and doing something creepy like this. She doesn't get a fucking break throughout this whole, like I was like, God, how about like a scene of her like taking a bath, or
not
like
even
having
a funeral,
soda,
man.
Not even the funeral.
The funeral is freak. That was probably the scariest part for me, and I remember it being terrifying then too. You know, when the coffin goes down and she goes. I love how she like immediately jumps down into a hole in the ground, you know, to grab her son, and the body, a fucking dead body, like. Not even just a dead body, her husband's body kind of like lifts up and like falls over her and turns into fucking Freddy Krueger. Like, how crazy is that?
Do you want to talk about the funeral scene? Just like, do you think that is maybe the scariest scene? And like, I like very much vividly remember that as a kid, being like, when Freddy's popping out of like the bottom of the coffin, like that, like really like scaring me. And I think it's like really well done here. Like, because there's a lot of chaos. Like the earthquakes really create a chaos. And, you know, even when she's in the house, it's like, oh God. And like she smacks her head on the thing, and it's like her husband's funeral. Like, Jesus Christ. Like,
but everyone still like hates like Heather Langenkamp.
They're all like, oh, it's fine. No big deal. No one's believing her. Everyone's like, you know, well, I think you're being crazy. But
I mean, but like, I would too.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real here. I am totally calling the police on Heather Langenkamp as she's like doing this across the street to go into her house, right? But you know, if I'm John Saxon, I'm like, yeah, there's Freddy Krueger. Okay, I'll believe it. Let's go with it.
But okay, so
it's even worse too, though, just because she like looks so. Like after she like comes to at the funeral, it's like it's just such a horrible like place and time to have something embarrassing happen,
right?
And she's like in hysterics on the ground, and everybody's like, oh, you know, it's just like it that scene is intense.
Yeah, like I mean, I agree with you, Zach. Like I would, if I were in that crowd, I'd be like, ooh, someone's losing it. Like, right? Yeah. Like, and so you also feel bad. You just feel so bad for her because it's like. But again, like you said, Zach, she's in it. She's not denying that it's happening. It's just that everyone around her is like, I don't know about that. But she's like, no, it's fucking Freddy Krueger. I know it is. Did you see the slashes? Like,
I got to get Rex home.
Yeah.
Get Rex home. There was the kid still has Rex, because I think there was two of them, and Wes had one and the kid has one. And there was recently like an Indiegogo or something like that to like do like a Nightmare fan film, and the kid was going to be attached, and it was going to be like Dylan's Revenge or something like that. I don't think it raised enough money for it, but it would have been, I don't know, it'd been cool to like but like that's the one that's like attached to Heather Langenkamp, so I would have loved to like seen a continuation of that.
And
like,
she's alive in that.
Bring her back now, and I will still watch a new Nightmare too. You know, like newest Nightmare, newer Nightmare. You know, however you want to title it, I'll watch it.
I think she doesn't, you know, kind of feel that appreciation.
Yeah.
Well, she's also been burned by the franchise, you know, a good bit. Like, she didn't get the Laurie Strode accolades, you know?
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's crazy, like, you mentioned she was being stalked, because wasn't the woman from Friday the 13th also being stalked, like that final girl? Yeah. And, like, when they brought her back for 2, that was when she was, like, still being stalked by her stalker, and, like,
Danielle
they ad-libbed her murder.
Was stalked. You know, Danielle Harris from the 2 Halloween films, like, a guy fucking showed up to her house with a shotgun in the back of his car, and... Like, she did a whole, like, yeah, I mean, I don't think she was a child then. I think she might have been like 18 or so. But
I mean, granted, it's scary no matter what.
It's fucking crazy, and like she had to get a restraining order. He went to jail. Everything. Like, this is because I don't know. I mean, I guess that's what makes like the new Scream a little bit, you know. more realistic is that there are fans like that. There are fans that will like fully do something like this. I don't know how you're going to do a new Nightmare, but like somebody could try, you know? Like, I want to know like where she kind of, I would be very curious to sit down and talk to her and like see where she kind of falls into it now, because there is so much, the conversation around especially Final Girls is so much different now than it, you know, has been. And because it used to be what, like Final Girls were like, the actresses could only get this role, this is the only thing they're gonna this is the only thing they're famous for, and a dead-end franchise, you know. But now they're appreciated.
It's just they were looked down on for so long, right? And like I think now they're like, with like, I do think Halloween and Scream have helped like be like, oh yeah, like these actors who did go on to do, you know, like Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and Jamie Lee Curtis are famous. Like for us, it's like we love them for those franchises, but for like they're famous and they've done a lot of other things, so people kind of legitimize.
And they,
Laz, we lost your video.
And they typically do not, right?
Yeah, they really don't. And like, you know, like
they do, but like, you know, slightly, and like they do it.
It just varies on degree of like fan appreciation, right? It always comes down to fans and like how beloved those are, because it's going to go one of two ways. You're either going to be like the Jamie Lee Curtis who is, you know, praised for this one role, and she never really wasn't praised. Like it was always a big like bubble of excitement around her character, but she wanted to distance herself from it, right? So it's like she didn't really appreciate it until like later. But then you have like a Neve Campbell who never really lost that appreciation and always kind of spoke highly of Scream.
It's odd though that she doesn't get the respect that other Final Girls get, because there's no, if you think about it logically, there's like no reason, and it's not like she's a Friday the 13th Final Girl, or not to discredit that franchise, but it's different. Like it's just different, and she is capable and smart and like definitely somebody to like look up to. So I don't understand why Heather Langenkamp never got that same sort of praise that Jamie Lee Curtis got, especially when, I mean, if we're being honest, like Jamie Lee Curtis has starred, well, Jamie Lee Curtis has done more Friday or Halloween movies, but Heather Langenkamp has only done the best of the movies of her franchise.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Troy, I was like, ooh, tread lightly.
Don't appreciate the fucking shade, but you know what? Whatever.
I was like, whoa.
Whatever. Okay.
You guys know what I mean.
No, I
She was. Let me defend her. She was contracted to do Resurrection. Okay.
Halloween 6. Nobody forgot. I didn't forget.
When we did our Scream live stream, one of the guys on the panel,
man.
To be fair, he's a big Halloween fan, but he really hates the new ones, and he kept bringing them up. And I was like, "Oh, Zach is gonna like burn this podcast to the ground."
I hate it when Ian's biggest line is Jamie Lee Curtis is MAGA now, or like Laurie Strode is MAGA now, and it like drives me fucking insane. I want to burn the fucking house down. You know? You know what? But like, it is true that Nancy just doesn't have that same standing, even though when you go through like the franchises, like she should, but she doesn't have that respect.
Like people don't respect her.
You go through the franchises. There's what? Michael, Freddy.
So I'm curious.
Jason.
Why not?
Just, I don't know. Like, I'm really trying to rack my brain thinking of like, because there, like you said, Troy, there's no reason at all.
There's no reason.
Maybe it's just that Freddy just got too big and sort of eclipsed her.
So like for me, it's less about Freddy and more about Nancy.
Well, but like, but right, Laz, I mean, you even think like she is like a underrated, like she's not, doesn't get the appreciation is what we're saying. And like, I wonder why that is, right? Because she should.
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
But I mean, even if we think about that, like she's perceived as like one of the strongest of the strong. Like she is arguably, if you put all of the Final Girls together in order of their first movie, like she's up there. She has to be like probably number one as like most capable, right? Like,
yeah.
Most resourceful.
Laurie just kind of falls into a survivor, you know?
Well, Laurie and
there's
Sydney
no rhyme or
both
reason
kind of,
for it. Yeah. I mean, Michael's moving super slow, so she's like a little bit of an easier target to hit. And then you have who else? Like Sydney, and Sydney's got like, you know, there's a lot happening with Sydney. So like there's
Yeah.
plenty of ins and outs for her, right? Like she's got a good escape route a little bit, but like Nancy is front lines of whatever this war is, you know. And what fucking sucks about Nancy is that she has to be like, if we're just thinking about the first movie, she has to be the legend of her fucking town, right? Like the crazy girl who got locked in her house and bars put on the window and was screaming from the windows, right? And she lost all of her friends. Like nobody ever believed her. She ended up like a true final girl by herself. Like arguably, you know, even more traumatic than the others, you know, but like, I mean, I guess Sydney's boyfriend, that's pretty traumatic, but like a dream that like you cannot even explain to somebody, like,
Right.
you know, it's crazy.
But
Like,
Zach, I actually think that you're onto something though when you say that Freddy, because like, okay, if you think about it in the sense that Jason is a zombie blob,
Yeah.
Michael has no spirit and is an entity or whatever. She's working up against like arguably the most charismatic horror movie character in history. I mean, like, I guess
Robert Englund.
Yeah, like it's hard to combat Freddy Krueger. Like he's doing stand up while he kills people. You know what I mean? Like that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah,
and your dreams.
Yeah, and he's just like, go to bed, motherfucker. I do think, like, especially in the 80s, I almost feel like final girls in general weren't as like respected as like, it was more like people were like, yeah, the killer, blah blah blah, and like people weren't as like, I mean, I don't know why, but they weren't as concerned with like the ladies. And I think I've said this to you before, Zach, like most of the like horror stuff, like I didn't buy a lot of horror merch because I was always interested in the final girls, but there was never.
But like, where are their like?
them.
Okay, so in that I Am Nancy documentary, like everybody has her son like Freddy Krueger like dolls, and she's every one of them asking. She's saying, was there a Nancy doll around there? Like, motherfuckers make this shit. It's because the gays were fighting for gay rights and not for the final girls at that time, and like all the straight men were, you know, out wearing the Freddy Krueger shirts, you know.
But like, are you kidding me? No Nancy doll, come the fuck on.
And that reaction tells me she's not saying no to a licensing deal.
Yeah.
Action figures, please, something.
I mean, I would love a shelf of like final girl figures. Like that's I would love that.
Instead, you're having to make fucking customs.
Zach, what did you say about making customs?
You're fucking great at it because they're not fucking making them, right? Like they're not making
my
them.
Sidney Prescott.
Like, he has 4 of them. He has 5 of them for all 5 movies. Yeah, and they're all great. But like, if you're not gonna give it to us, the gays have to make them themselves, I guess, right? Always get the shit under the stick and everything. The next gay rights fight is our final girls merch. You know, having to go to fucking Etsy and Redbubble.
The front line, I will be there with a pitchfork.
Yeah, but yeah, so like, kind of winding up the like movie, and Nancy, fucking. You know, Dylan's off. Oh my God, this fucking kid would have stressed me the fuck out. He's off running across the freeway and everything. It stresses me out watching her run across that freeway because it's just like, as a kid, I thought it was super cool and stuff. Now somebody who can drive on the freeway, like,
it's a really cool effect. Like, because I watched the making of this movie before, and I know that it was some kind of like green screen moment, like the trucks weren't there or whatever. But like, for like 90, what was it, 94? Was that?
Yeah.
That was pretty fucking cool, incredible. Like, even watching it today, I was like, holy shit.
It's like great. It's great. And all the drivers seeing this like exorcist kid like floating in the air. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know what. Again, I'm thinking from the perspective of everybody watching this stuff go on, you know, the perspectives.
They just see like this kid like jumping around.
It's like, what is happening? Heather Langenkamp's running across the road. There's a child in the air. I thought I saw Freddy Krueger in the clouds, but I can't be sure.
Like, but he's wearing a trench and he doesn't wear a trench. So who is that guy?
And there's an army over there of other Freddys. So
oh my God,
something's fucking happening. I don't know. I love Wes going all out with these ideas, right? And I wonder how many of the ideas, because we know that the island idea was like scrapped, but like, how many other ideas did they have to like say no to, right? Because his mind was just racing. He was on some Adderall, you know, up at 3 a.m. Yeah,
relatable.
Yeah.
Can I bring up another really random thing that I just adore about this movie?
Yes.
Everything. Go for it.
Okay, so one of my favorite things about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise in general is the woven through like religious stuff, because I like religion in horror. And I like when the Freddy movies decide to kind of like lean into Freddy being this like bastard child or whatever, you know? And I like that in this movie, it was like, well, instead of leaning into religion, they leaned into like fairy tales and like folklore. And, you know, that was really cool. It was like a cool way to switch things. Because normally it's very Catholic, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, like they leaned into like Greek mythology.
Yeah.
And like he definitely like turns into the devil before he explodes.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Like, yeah.
Right. After
like,
Pompeii comes falling down, like I just heard this song in my head.
Oh, an exclusive song from Zachary Patton Garcia.
Oh, perfect. But like, yeah, you go from the like freeway chase, and like she's running back to the house, and this is I think my favorite. So my favorite part is definitely the freeway part, but like my second favorite part would have to be when John Saxon shows up, and
that's my favorite part.
There's that change moment where he is her dad again, and there's a moment where she fucking realizes, it doesn't take her very long, but she like finally like realizes it, changes into her pajamas, and then there's the music cue. She turns around, she goes into the house. I think my only rewrite here would be, because when she goes inside, she goes inside her old Elm Street house, right? But like when she would get inside, it's her normal house. I would have made it the Elm Street house, that set, and then like either her mother or Wes Craven like sitting in the living room on the couch in the dark with the TV on and like drinking, like very drunk, like the mother was in the original, you know,
with her infamous bottle,
watching like Nightmare on Elm Street. Like that would have been cool to like walk in and see her doing that, and she says something to Nancy like she did in the original, and Nancy goes upstairs and has to like go under the covers, like, you know, do all that stuff again. But like, you know, she goes, it's okay.
Have any of you ever read Bret Easton Ellis's Lunar Park? Because I kept thinking of that. Is
that a book?
Bret Easton Ellis is a piece of shit. Disclaimer here, but I have read most of his books, and I do like a lot of them. And Lunar Park is basically like this, but with his books. And it's like Bret Easton Ellis is the main character of the book, but he's being haunted by Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, but like only seeing him kind of, and like being sent a video of him, and like his next door neighbor ends up being one of the characters from Rules of Attraction, and like weird shit. That's like cool. That. I love it. It's a very long, weird book, and it's like one of my favorites of his books, because like I have read all of them, but even I didn't get all of the references, but there's apparently like a zillion references, right?
Yeah.
And I kept thinking of that because the book I sent you, Zach, that I wrote was influenced by Lunar Park, but I feel like Lunar Park absolutely had to have been influenced by New Nightmare, because it's almost like if New Nightmare were Wes Craven's point of view is what it's like. So I just kept thinking of that while we were watching this.
No, I've never read that.
I will say that I did miss, to add to your point, I missed like, and I've never thought about it until this viewing. I missed the dreams. Like I missed the sort of breakaway. Like when you describe that moment of her going in the house, and like how cool it would have been if she was like in her old house, and, you know, like if we had some sort of like whimsical sort of dream sequence. Like I did miss the dreams, because I love even in the worst Nightmare on Elm Street movies, the dreams are still really creative and cool.
Because that is where they get creative, right? Like that's where they stretch their real, like, you know, they kind of take the producer's head off, and they're, you know, just playing without a budget, you know.
For like the wackiest one, I think it's from Dream Warriors, when Zsa Zsa Gabor is on the TV and gets slashed by Freddy Krueger.
Who goes, fuck what you think, bitch?
Yeah.
Like, Troy McEady is the next Freddy Krueger, everybody.
So weird. I'm
actually the original. I hate to break you guys this, but I'm Freddy Krueger.
You did all the ADR for the original movie.
Prime, bitch.
And then we go down into like this final battle scene, and it's all cool and fun, but like, again, like I think we've already talked about this, that it kind of like does go down a little bit, but it's okay. It's a nice wind up, and I don't know, it's just a fucking great movie, man. I love it. I wouldn't be mad if they brought back, you know, Heather Langenkamp to do something similar. I don't know how they would do that though. Like, how do you bring Heather Langenkamp back?
Only Wes could do it, honestly.
You think?
I think he's the only one that could do it in a way that felt like it made sense in his franchise. Like, it's just his brain.
Yeah. I mean, although I will say, I would feel confident that the guys that did the new Scream, if they did something like that, I would be like,
yeah.
I have confidence in you boys.
Yeah, they can
So
do anything
fed.
they want now. I'm good with that.
Again, I just want a fucking all-out Final Girl movie with our Final Girls. Jamie Lee Curtis, Heather Langenkamp, fucking Nev Campbell. Like, it doesn't have to make any fucking sense. It does not have to make sense. Put them all as as Laurie Strode and Nancy. Like, just a movie. Put them against some sort of baddie. It could be all of their baddies. It could be a new baddie. I don't care. Just like, what a concept, what an idea. I think what would be holding that back? I mean, I guess Disney needs to buy them all up, right? Because just different properties. But like, if Disney buys them all, we can get that. Maybe on like a Hulu show. But it would just be
Girls
cool.
Endgame.
Imagine the money that would make.
I mean,
it'd be incredible.
Talk about a box office, right? It would probably be the highest grossing box office movie and for a horror movie in quite a while.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and I really do think this is the scariest Freddy has been, and he does. I mean, you guys touched upon that. He looks sleeker, and somehow it makes him look scarier. It makes him look more intimidating because he's like more like this body positivity. I don't mean body positivity, but he feels more comfortable in his like. It's not like he's like this like guy who was tortured by these people, wrongly tortured by these people. He feels like just like a monster that looks like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like he. So I heard somebody say so There's also a documentary like about them making all of it's called like Never Sleep Again, about all of them. They're making all of them. And I think in that they state that the idea for him in this one was that he was born that way rather than like burned or scarred or something in the past. Like he doesn't have a backstory. He was born as evil, like, you know, and this is his evil justness. I think
like Wes's process was that he wanted to go like within mythology.
I love the idea of Wes just sitting in his all white house with, you know, floor to ceiling glass windows and just like reading Greek mythology books, coming up with a new nightmare. And I guess our closing question will be, who are you as a final girl? Not any of these. Are you hiding? Are you running? Are you fighting? I guess those are the three categories, right?
Running.
Running. Okay.
Yeah, I'm running. Like I'm running and escaping and like, you know, running amongst several entries of a franchise, I guess. How do you as a final girl deal with a chase? Are you the final girl that falls over branches, or are you the final girl that like hides with a knife? Like it's interesting, and like those things do make a big difference, you know, from horror franchise to horror franchise. Like, you know, the Friday the 13th is made up of chase scenes, and they're all usually pretty illogical. You know what I mean? So it's like, but that's the vibe of that movie, and like that's like the reality that they're rooted in. Like I almost feel like you can kind of tell the strength of a horror villain based on like the chase scenes. You know?
It depends. Like I would help and maybe get murdered and not be a final girl, but like if the killer's like attacking all of you guys, I would be like, oh, we gotta fight. But if it's just me and the killer, then I'm gonna like bolt and like try to get as far away as I fucking can. But like if it's like, like I don't know, if like I'm like Sydney in that fucking house, then I'm gonna fight, because it's like, well, the killers are both in here, they've got hostages, there's nothing else, I can't leave these people to die.
Ian's hiding in that closet, like back in the fucking closet, man.
Who would you be, Zach? What would you be?
I'm not confident that I'm a final girl, because in a fight or flight, I'm definitely fight. And that usually works out for me, or it doesn't. So it's a 50-50. If I make it, I guess I get to go to another movie, you know? But, I think we said last time in our crawl episode that, my confidence is either going to kill me or push me to the finish line. So,
which is, if it was me and Zach would be the guy in every horror movie that doesn't believe it's happening and is like jokey about it. And
I 100% believe it. You don't have to convince me. Absolutely not. I believe it right off the bat.
You would be the guy in Paranormal Activity that's like, oh, there it goes.
No. I'm the guy going to the next floor, and somebody on my elevator is getting off at this floor of the hospital, and I see Heather Langenkamp having a fit down the hallway, and I fully believe it's Freddy Krueger. She didn't even have to speak to me.
You would be the evil nurse in Dream Warriors that's just telling everybody to go to sleep. You're like, it's all figments of your imagination.
Hey, it's all he is,
I'll take this pill.
Where can everybody find you, Troy?
You can follow my podcast. I have a podcast called Dunzo, and I have a second podcast called Beyond the Blinds. They're both on all the things, and you can follow me online at Troy McEady or just at Dunzo Podcast as well.
Laz, where can everyone find you online? All right, well,
We're okay. We're having some technical difficulties with Laz. You can find Laz Marquez at Laz Marquez on all the things, right? It's just his name at
Yep.
Laz Marquez and LazMarquez.com to buy a bunch of cool prints like that. The Final Girl print is pretty cool, so I'd suggest going and grabbing that one. What about Slayerfest, Ian? Since we're on a new network now, what about Slayerfest? You promote that one separate now.
oh, well, you can find my podcast at SlayerFestX98
Yes.
on all social media platforms. That's the handle. And where Zachary also co-hosts sometimes over there too, when I can bully him into doing it.
We're gonna be watching Angel soon. We're gonna be going through that fucking hot dog shit
wow.
mess.
I'm
Yeah.
excited for you to go through that since you've never
I'm
like
just, like,
fully watched it.
Worried that I won't commit and I won't watch it.
Don't worry, I'll bully you.
I'll show up and be like, yeah, but Maddie on Euphoria. Did you see that one? Yeah, that one. Well, we thank you guys so much for being on it. I fucking love this movie. I'm so happy to have talked to you guys with, have had you guys, oh my God, what are words? Had you guys on this podcast with us to talk about it, and we will see everybody next time.
Bye.
Bye.